it's appropriate that we concentrate on not only the issues in Flint, Michigan, and around the country, but also around the world. But the last 4 years, the devastating drought that has been impacting California and the area I represent has been ground zero, and where we've had a zero water allocation to the federal projects, and we're looking at potentially a third zero water allocation. Benjamin Franklin once famously said that when the well is dry, we learn the worth of water. Well, let me tell you something. We've been learning the worth of water and have known the worth of water for many, many years, because the wells have been running dry in the San Joaquin Valley. To the point that, to the earlier question, Mr. Commissioner, that you were asked, it's really over 600,000 acre-feet of water, and if you add the state project, over 700,000 acre-feet of water. But that would, and I want to be very clear about this, would change lifting the biological opinions. You'd only operate under D 1461, which is water salinity standards. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the present. And the present is this. The fact is that despite El Nino-like conditions in December and in January, February was dry, but the last 2.5 weeks, let me tell you something. We've had a total of flood control runs in the Sacramento River system and above average in the San Joaquin River system. So in effect, that 200,000 acre-feet of water a day for the last 10 days have gone out the delta out into the ocean. And while we have been pumping at 5,000, minus 5,000 OMR, the concern is that the water that we've lost, I mean, think about it, 200,000 acre-feet of water going out per day for a 10-day average, rivers at flood-controlled levels. And yet we have lost, if you look at since January, not the last 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks we have been up to minus the maximum under the biological opinions. But in January, we were at 2,500. And the total loss, if you look at January up until February, is about 270,000 acre-feet within the range, Mr. Commissioner, within the range of the biological opinions. Which gets me to Mr. Kurth. What's the purpose of the incidental take under the Endangered Species Act? Let me ask, say yes or no. My understanding that the incidental take level is a number that defines the anticipated take of a species listed under the Endangered Species Act, and if the reasonable and prudent alternatives in the biological opinion are followed. Is that correct? Is that the purpose of the incidental take limit?
To give legal protection to the action agency if they follow the reasonable and prudent act.
Okay, so it's my understanding that under the current incidental take for delta smelt for this water year was 56. There's a mathematical matrix that is used for the projects with a multiple index. And so far, 3 have been taken this year, which totals 12. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, Mr. Kurth, does the budget requests included in your appropriate funding for management of delta smelt under the Endangered Species Act include enough funding to monitor species, to fine-tune operations, and not lose water supplies?
Yes, it contains a $2.6 million increase for planning and
Well, that's wonderful, and I want to make sure you have all the money you need, okay? But you know what? This year, we've lost 270,000 acre-feet of water this year, even if the range is allowable under the BIOPS opinion by your agency, while the projects have taken such a low number of 12, when 56 is the number, right?
The goal of the reasonable and prudent action is to avoid entrainment. The number of fish that we...
But you have a range, right? Why do you have a range?
Because
to have flexibility.
But the number of fish that we detect is not...
I understand, but is the 56 number irrelevant then?
It's not the goal.
Okay.
Our goal is to take as few as possible.
But we have a crisis. We have an emergency. It seems to me under those circumstances, we would, because we have a crisis, because we've had a zero water allocation last year and the year before, and we may have a zero allocation this year, and you maximize what could have been used in January when we're only at 3 take, and we could have got, I mean, I could see if we got to 40 or 45, then put the brakes on, okay? I get that, you know? But the allowable legal take was 56, and you didn't get close.
We believe that the number of fish entrained, which we're trying to reduce, would include much higher mortality.
And tell me then how well we've done. Is the delta smelt recovering?
The delta smelt is not recovering.
Of course not. And the salmonoid is in problems too. It seems to me whatever we're doing is not working. Will Sell testified that there were over 23 other stress factors that were greater than the entrainment of fish at both the state and federal projects, but we're doing nothing about the 23 other stressors that are impacting the smelt and the salmonoid. Only the entrainment issue. I don't think we're managing this very well, and I want to give you all the money you can to manage it. But your questions, I think, clearly explain part of the problem. The answers to your questions, my questions, weren't your questions.
No, I think it's a very difficult issue. There's issues that affect
Yeah.
salmon that are different than the issues that affect the smelt, and it is a very complex issue.
No, yeah. Tell that to my constituents. Very complex. I'll tell you what they'll tell you. Yes.
I think